Caroline Hernandez, through here with the Right to Voice Habitat Working Group, which is hosted and facilitated by the University of Illinois Chicago, and here with Iris Caldwell. We're also hosting Growing Chicago Habitat, which is working with Chicago Wilderness on focusing on energy and transportation rights of way in their working lands.
Everyone get that okay? Your mic's a little bit garbled, but but I think we got that.
Got it? Okay, sorry about that.
Okay, David or Dave.
Dave Holman, independent, with no one in particular. I do whatever the marks tell me to do. Also Casey, also whatever Casey tells me to do, because Casey's awesome.
Let's see, Aberdeen, I've got you next. It looks like you're driving.
I am driving. 3:30 is always kind of a tough time for me, but I am sitting in on this meeting today to just learn a little bit more. I am from the Village of Riverside. I'm a trustee. I am in the really kind of lucky and exciting position of being tasked with doing a climate action plan and resilience plan for the Village of Riverside. And it's basically the whole community. So I'm trying to work with the C4 organization to engage with other taxing bodies and to really like figure out what the resources are. And Chicago Wilderness has been a fantastic resource for us, and they've invited us to this meeting. So I'm here to learn.
Excellent. And Jack, you just appeared and disappeared on my screen. Are you still there? Did you?
I am still here. Hi, everybody. Jack
Okay.
Runner with Tetra Tech.
There you go. And anyone, Laura, I think, Laura Riley.
Yes. Hello, everybody. I'm Laura Riley. I'm the coordinator of Chicago Wilderness, and happy to be here and listening to this discussion. And I'm going to be on mute most of the time today. Thank you.
All right, great. So I think that's everyone. If I missed anyone, please unmute yourself. Okay. I think that was everyone. All right, I'm just gonna quickly, so most of this meeting is gonna be allowing Bold Bison folks. So Brandon, I think that's you, and wasn't Nicole gonna, is it Nicole? I forget, was gonna join us, or?
Natalie, but
Natalie, right.
her flight home from San Diego was delayed.
Okay, all right, great. So yeah, I just wanted to quickly do just a couple of quick sort of announcements and updates on the hub, and then we'll turn everything over to Brandon to lead the meeting. So just some quick updates. I'm going to share, we have a new sort of dashboard. I sent this out by email, but I wanted to make sure folks saw it. I'll first drop the link in. That's the link, but I'll share my screen if I can. Yeah, it looks like it can. So this is the new, we have sort of an agriculture dashboard. It just we've got a set of different metrics that are kind of looking at green infrastructure related to or regenerative agriculture type practices. So things like what's the total amount of agricultural land? What you see on the left here is how much agricultural land has been lost over the years. So you can see these are from 2010 to 2013. Excuse me, is the first column, then 2013 to 2016, and then 2016 to 2019. So you can see a big loss recently.
So Mark, I was looking at that, I guess last week when you and Don and I were playing around.
Okay. And
I'm genuinely curious, where did 126,000 acres go in 3 or 4 years? Where's that data being pulled from?
Yeah, so this is like, again, I don't want to spend too much time on this, so definitely follow up with us on this, but we took the NLCD, the National Land Cover Data Set, and looked at all the different years. So there's a 2010, a 2013, a 2016, and a 2019. And we compared all of those years, and so when there's a conversion in what the NLCD calls as agriculture to something else, then we consider that a loss. So there's some links down below in that, in this section down below here.
Oh, I hadn't noticed that. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I probably should make that text a little bigger.
No, that's all on me. And we were doing 3 things at once that day. It's fine. It's fine.
So then also over on the right, just kind of looks at tillage and non-tillage practices and conventional tillage. Again, not wanting to jump too deep into that, but those are sort of conservation practices. The no-till is a conservation practice, and then conservation tillage is similar to no-till, except they're sort of lifting the soil and putting seeds in and dropping it back down, or there's different ways to do it. But so that not all of the land is being turned over. And then there's like the use of cover crops. So that kind of basic information is all, and everything in the right-hand side is coming out of the agricultural sort of census data. So just wanted to quickly touch on that so you're familiar with it and see it, and would love to get any feedback through email or whatever source you might have. If you have any burning questions, you can ask those right now, but again, I don't want to spend too much time on that.
Just a quick observation, Mark, and that is just to say that this is Dave's great question is a good reason to have dashboards like this. And just deliver up the information in a way that prompts question and discussion and analysis. And so whether these are the, how the numbers themselves are arrived at is one subset of that, but the idea is to do this for each of the initiatives in some way, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah, and I see your note too there, Ted, about adding the word lost. Yeah, we can make those changes. That's a good idea. Yeah, that's exactly right, Mark. And we kind of have at this point some dashboardy or tracking type maps for goals 1, 2, 3 is kind of in development right now, and 4. So we have a little something for 1 through 4. We need to really get on 5, 6, and 7 in terms of making some progress on that. And I know that there is a cafe coming up this Wednesday on I think it's on aquatics, so that'll be great. Maybe we'll hear some more about what those folks are.
I think that's tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
Yeah. Oh, tomorrow. That's what I meant to say. I'm sorry. Right. Okay, so just wanted to show that. Again, send any emails or thoughts about that or drop it in the chat. And let's see, the other one, this is really quick just to say that Amy and I are working together, mostly Amy at this point, I think now, on updating this interactive map. So we have shown this before. I made a little bit of changes to this, but this map shows where we have different types of plans that are out there. So conservation plans or ecological plans, whatever you want to call them. And Amy's going to, I think, mostly focus probably on watershed plans, but we'll continue to add those to this map. You can kind of click on these and then it'll give you links to the like different green infrastructure plans or whatever type of plan it is. So let's see, I just clicked on Woodstock. It's just going to open up the PDF of it. Looks like that's slowly loading. There you go. So this will just kind of be a dashboard to sort of let us know where we have different types of plans like this. So it could be green infrastructure plans, watershed plans, I suppose master plans, you name it. So if there are things that you think should be on this map that we don't have, Amy's just getting started with it, but you might offer some suggestions to her if you have ones you want to make sure make it in there. Jim, I know you like the one from Cook County, the southern Cook County one, so that one is in here already. That's this one. Oh, that's Midlothian. Oh wait, it's one of these two. Let's do the square one.
Who do you say is working on this, Mark?
Amy, on the call here, Amy
Okay.
Hellman.
Okay.
Yeah, Jim, you sent a couple helpful links that I already saw, like the CMAP watershed plan, I think is the next one I'll add. So I appreciate, you sent some links in one of our past meetings, so.
Right, right. So, you know, the conservation opportunity areas for IDNR, I'll put it in chat.
This isn't watershed based, Amy, but if you guys are interested in bringing up more green areas, I know CW has written some plans like the Dunes plan and the Prairies plan that could be helpful to add on this. It's not watershed based, but if you're looking for other things, those might be easy, quick links to add.
Yeah, you can forward them to me if you have I can
Okay.
put my email in the chat.
No,
but-
I have it.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay, so this is embarrassing. I'm just trying to get out of screen sharing mode and I can't seem to do that. Anyone have any suggestions? I'm not seeing the tools.
Stop being so selfish. Or no, stop
Can
being so
someone
altruistic. Be more selfish. That's what I meant to say.
I guess you could just sign out and sign back in, but that seems to be overkill.
I mean, I honestly, I don't even see those.
Brandon is starting to share. Brandon
Okay.
is starting to share his screen.
Okay.
I just took it away from you, Mark, in order to
Thank
get
you
us
for
out of
doing
it. It's okay.
All right. Good. And let me just drop into chat. One final thought is that we have on next, I'll put it in here, on Wednesday, March 29th, UIC is hosting a Growing Chicago Habitat Workshop. And Tega from UIC and I will be we'll be doing a breakout session that focuses on rights of way prioritization. I know that the space is very limited for that breakout session, but there may be, Iris, I don't know if there's room for other folks if they want to come and join and be a part of some of what goes on.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, so Caroline, maybe you can drop the registration link into the chat. But yeah, next Wednesday morning is when we're having that meeting. Again, primarily focused on energy, transportation, land, and bringing together different partners that are interested in working in that space.
All right, and with that, we will turn it over to you, Brandon.
Officially, as opposed to unofficially. Thanks, everybody. For those of you who don't know me, or sort of why I'm on here and what Chicago Wilderness is asking me to do. So like I mentioned, Brandon Hayes with Bold Bison Communications and Consulting, and Chicago Wilderness Alliance has engaged my firm to work intensely with each of the 7 Green Initiative teams in order to think about sort of strategies to recruit more people to the work, strategies to prioritize different pieces of the work toward those green vision goals between now and 2030. And to begin to think about how that work can move forward in very substantive ways, because now that we are in 2023, the theme for Chicago Wilderness in 2023 is moving into action and action mode. We've already been moving forward on a whole lot of different initiatives, working closely with some of you on this call, and hopefully working more closely with the Hub team. Both sort of thinking big picture about the Hub, which is what I would like to do a little bit today, but also sort of getting our conversation started with sort of how we're approaching the work with each of the 7 initiative teams, and how we are sort of capturing some of those priorities, how we're approaching prioritization. And I'm going to run through a few of those and show you sort of how we're thinking about sort of literally kind of structuring the way that we're literally thinking about the work, and seeing how we can connect into what the Hub is offering. Because I do want to shatter kind of something that Mark Johnson was just saying, that it's, to me, less about there being sort of one sort of piece of data in the Hub for each of the initiatives. I mean, certainly that's a good goal, and certainly that's what we want to be doing, even if for nothing more than sort of present in the hub for each of the initiatives. But really it is sort of like, what are the individual kind of pieces of work and priorities that each of the initiative teams is doing? And it may be that one of the initiatives has, 4, 5, 6 different ways that they're using the hub. One might only have one, but it really is sort of thinking about, how are we thinking about data? How are we thinking about all of the sort of technology and brain power that the hub team can bring to moving some of these pieces of work forward? And a lot of the energy with multiple of the initiatives at the moment is around thinking about data, how we know what we know, and how that can be useful, sort of tying to other opportunities, whether they're moving pieces of work forward or whether it's tied into federal funding or whether it's tied into other initiatives, to kind of think about how do we really think deeply about how we're doing this and how the hub can be useful, sort of thinking about data that can also reverberate beyond the Chicago Wilderness region. I know that that was part of a conversation that IDNR had with the Marks and Laura, about, hey, investment in the hub could be a way to think about standardizing the way we think about, land data beyond the Chicago Wilderness boundary, and that being sort of an important way to think about how this work can reverberate. To that end, there actually is going to be a bit of the conversation that we're going to have tomorrow in the Water Initiatives Cafe. It is going to be thinking about how we know what we know about water, how we use the data that we do use in the Chicago Wilderness region, and whether or not that data that we use should strategically be connected to the Environmental Protection Agency's sort of way of handling data and thinking about data also. That's a conversion that our friends north of the border in Wisconsin already made. We're going to hear from them tomorrow about what that process was like why they did it, what was important, and sort of how that went. As a way to think strategically, is that something that we need to do for the rest of the Chicago Wilderness region? And then in thinking about data, is there a way to reflect that on the hub? And is there a way to sort of standardize some of that data to create, whether it's water work or any kind of work, that the hub is kind of a go-to place for that information, both for practitioners on the ground, but also potentially for funders, sort of giving guidance to the funding community about, the family foundation community and others about how to think about impact on the ground in terms of land use, could be a really strategic way of thinking about the work for the hub for the Chicago Wilderness Alliance, or, all sorts of other ways to kind of be able to tell stories over time too. I mean, think about how all of our eyes popped out of our head, and Dave Holman of all people was like, oh my God, how did we lose 125,000 acres in ag in those 3 years? I mean, that's a powerful story that's visualized right there. So sort of thinking about it in those terms. Okay, I'm gonna take a breath after my preamble, and then I'm gonna share my screen. So some of you have seen this, some of you who are co-chairs of initiative teams, some of you have not seen it. Iris, you'll be seeing it on Wednesday, probably twice, both at the steering committee meeting and then at the Green Infrastructure Teams meeting. But this is the way that we're beginning to work with the initiative teams to capture the work at hand. And I'm just going to run quickly through a piece of it. And Ted, who's on here, has filled it out for climate. But the way that we're thinking about it is capturing the work plan for the initiatives in 2023 in the form of a slide deck. Because we made the observation, my colleague Natalie made the observation actually, that CW kind of runs through slide decks. So let's just use the tool that they actually use in terms of thinking about stuff. So how we're working this with each of the initiative teams is that this initial slide for each of the initiatives, the ones with the borders, if you run through the deck, and I'll share the link to this deck in a moment, but captures sort of those highest level top priorities, looking sort of right now through the middle of 2023 toward the end of 2023, sort of what are those 3 pieces of work? And for example, that you see here on your screen, managing healthy landscapes, is really leaning into the prescribed burn initiative, sponsorship through the Cook County Forest Preserves, the urban forestry subgroup, and then moving forward a cooperative weed management area. And so in this slide, you see captured sort of who's leading that work, whether there's a budget associated with it. So you see there the $20,000 for the prescribed burn initiative, whether there are target audiences, what some of the next steps are at the moment, and then also whether there was a cafe or that type of piece. And then if you click into the subsequent slides under each initiative, you see more detail built out. So for the prescribed burn initiative, you see a fuller kind of why statement about why this work is important. You see where there's synchronicity among the different teams with the different initiatives. You also see a button that says, or a data point at the top that says when it was the slide was last updated. So this slide captures work up through March 3rd of this year. And so, and what's nice here too is that the co-chairs in filling these out can also give them to others to fill out. So if there's somebody doing that piece of work who isn't the co-chair, that person can sort of be in charge of the slide and put that information in there. So far we've unrolled this with initiative 1 with managing healthy landscapes. We've also, we're about to give it to green infrastructure on Wednesday. We'll be talking next week with protecting landscapes for biodiversity conservation, but also increasing equitable access to nature. Danny and Radhika have filled out their section, showing some of those goals underneath, the synchronicity among the different initiative teams and sort of where that work is. And it was just last updated on the 15th for this initiative. For instance, TED has also done their 5 priorities for the climate group and built out the pieces of the deck. And other thing I want to show you, and Water has it too, but they're getting through their cafe before they fill it out. And Maria, I have this little special present for you here in this deck, because the idea is, like, let's say we actually finish something. Let's say something that is prioritized here in the deck, in the work, actually is done, like totally finished. If something is completely finished, we're going to move completed projects down to the bottom of the deck. So when it comes time for the annual report capturing 2023, Maria can go to this lovely deck and she can pull the completed projects and she can look at the status of the other projects and sort of see it all tied together here in one place. Another quick thing I want to say about the deck is that there's a reason it's a deck. It's a deck versus a Google Doc, because with the Google Docs or sort of spreadsheets or those different types of tools, folks add a lot of words. We use a lot of words in Chicago Wilderness Alliance. We put a lot of detail into things, and this is not the place to capture that. If an initiative team wants deep detail and sort of also kind of capturing what our priority is looking out, beyond these ones that we're actually moving forward at this moment, that is great. You can put it on a Google Doc, you can carve that in a stone block. I don't care how you do it. Like, that's up to you as your team. But in terms of capturing where is the energy now, what are we moving forward right now, what are those priorities, we're using this slide deck so that we can capture this. We can see it at a glance. If the steering committee, for instance, or the executive council wants to see where everything is, we can capture each of these bordered pieces, these bordered slides, and just drop them into the update for that month or that week or that quarter and see at a glance, this is where the work is around managing healthy landscapes. These are the 3 things that they are moving forward at this moment. And then if we do need that detail, we can see sort of where things are with the updates. One thing that is missing, it occurs to me as we're talking to the hub group today, is a way to capture sort of where things might connect into the hub and sort of needs from the hub. So in this sense, I would less rather capture needs from the hub, for instance, around this entire Managing Healthy Landscapes initiative on this first slide, but I would love to know what are the needs that they might have in this priority, this, around the prescribed burn initiative. Is there mapping data that the hub, that they can use for the hub? Are there tools to connect to what the Chicago Wilderness region is doing, to what other parts of the state or other parts of the state of Illinois or other parts of the other states that we are part of are connecting to? So I think adding a line in for these slides that talks about like sort of needs from the hub or sort of collaboration with the hub might be something we want to put in there. Okay, now I will pause for questions, comments, concerns, and any sort of observations maybe from Ted, because Ted, you've had a chance to work with us a little bit.
Yeah, I think it's a really good sheet. I like the way it's laid out. I like sort of the at a glance thing. Brandon, I'm wondering if with the addition of the completed projects, if there's a way that you want to, or you want us to think about like crossing them off or detailing or notifying how they've been completed for that purpose, right? Is there any information you want to see other than just things moving off the list, or do you need proof that they've been completed, or like, has there been thought about that or not?
I think it depends on, like, Ted, for each of your priorities, let's move to climate for everybody here. And I sent the link to the actual deck now in the chat. For your 5, I mean, you know, are any of these going to be ever sort of completed, as it were? Are some of them going to be completed very quickly? It's really kind of up to what are the individual projects and sort of what are those, like, when does completion happen for each of the individual projects? So we would trust the initiative to tell us, you know, sort of the status of that project. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So like for that, I could see very quickly moving the small meetings off and being completed, right? And having that be replaced by whatever those small meetings generate, right?
Exactly.
So that's helpful. Thank you.
Yep. Other questions, comments?
One other question, and I know I owe you an offline discussion about this, but when you talked about the budget, that's also going to be very variable by group. And I'm having a hard time with my budget because I'm looking at all this stuff as if it's volunteer based, right? So I'm still having trouble with that. I think for the fire case, that makes perfect sense since we know that's a known cost, right? But I think that might be tricky for some folks.
Absolutely. Questions, comments?
A couple things. So one, I'm wondering, like, are there projects that are just kind of ongoing that never are reach that sort of completion status? So that's one thought.
Sure.
The second one is about the comment you said about the hub and kind of like tying in these projects to the hub. I was kind of hoping that there would just be a slide, you know, for each one of these groups that's like about the hub and metrics. Would that just be too much additional work, or is that something, so it's not as much of an afterthought, it's like here's what we're doing to work towards metrics and towards, you know, aligning.
Could we, Mark, do you think we could do it as almost like thinking about it in terms of like a knowledge that we have, knowledge that we need kind of thing, and then like sort of grouping metrics in that way?
Sure, yeah. I think
okay,
so.
then maybe that's the approach to it.
Mm-hmm. What do others think?
I think that would be helpful. Especially since, you know, one of our climate goals is to activate the hub, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it, and maybe some of those dashboardy pieces that Marcus, that we're starting to get together now, could sit somewhere in the deck. The question is, or maybe at the end of the deck. So, you know, the deck being, you know, a way to talk about this, you know, regularly. And sometimes you want to put the map in there and sometimes you don't, but it might be, or a dashboard piece as just a reminder of, and maybe there's a way to make it small and put it on one slide with the point about data we have and data we need, but that you can then see where the advancement toward the big goal is happening. Maybe adding too much to the information.
Mark, you know, and that sort of part of the reason that I wanted to show you all the deck here today in the hub group is you know, it's an opportunity to do some updating, sort of showing you where some of the things are and how we're thinking about it. But it's also, you know, the question up my sleeve is, you know, usually after we do the initiative updates, you know, it's sort of followed by a note or an update from the hub. So, you know, even though you don't have a pretty logo for the hub individually, like, does the hub need, is the hub the 8th team in here? Like, do we need to sort of add a slide for the hub group, sort of showing like the highest level things that you all are working on, and sort of the most active the most active pieces of work? And I see both of our steering committee members nodding vociferously. So that was a little bit of my show this to you and then say like, hey y'all, do you want to rung in this? Do you want to come to our camp out?
I've got deck FOMO right now.
So Mark, I kind of like your idea, but I don't think we want to. I really love this, Brandon. I love, you know, this is a new way of doing the Chicago Wilderness Work Plan that I think is very user friendly. But we could, you know, just put like a needle there that says how much are we achieving our goal, and have a link to the hub to, you know, if you wanted to include it in the deck. But I really think the important part here is really what the way Brandon is envisioned this is really good. It gives us an idea. Everybody can get a real quick look, and then, you know, that needle might be able to direct people for more information, more data. And, you know, as the deck becomes more populated and more friendly and everybody uses it, that needle becomes a quick identifier to go to the hub, because the hub is a great place. And I know we're trying to increase the use of it. And so I'd like to do that, but I also, from a planning standpoint, this is really, really great, Brandon. And I appreciate everything that's been done here.
Great. Yeah, there's a balance, you know, that we purposefully don't want to overload this with too much information, because that's an issue. Like if we try to think about everything we have to do, you know, there's a difference between, you know, an initiative team having their internal kind of document of like, you know, here are 3 pages of goals that are all important, that are going to help to get us, you know, to where we want to be by 2030. But then these are the priorities. And what this is capturing is the priorities. Like, at a glance, where is the work right now? So I think having the ability to look at sort of the work of the hub, you know, and have the sort of similar approach would be great. I want to test, you know, with it'll be the Green Infrastructure Group will be the next one that we're going to sit with, sort of post this conversation, to talk a bit about metrics. And I know Iris is on here about, you know, whether, you know, something toward metrics captured in here would be useful for the initiatives kind of moving the work forward. So I think it's a yes and, but I do, Jim, like your reminder that, you know, we can easily link out to you know, parts of the hub too. Other questions, comments, concerns?
I can share an example of this. Kind of speaks on the point of having the existing data versus data needed with each of the initiatives, because I actually attended a meeting with the Increasing Equitable Access to Nature group, and we were talking about how great would it be if we had access to language data throughout the Chicago wilderness for partners to use when thinking about best engagement practices and what type of materials you would need. You need Spanish translation materials. And I know that's like a census data type thing, and that might be a big undertaking, but for a long-term goal of like how that could be helpful to this group, I think that would be really awesome to kind of meet with each of the team leads and think about what data would help advance their work. And if we have it, that's awesome. And then if we need to work on it, that's something that we could work on. But that was an example I thought of, because we were talking about, oh, it'd be so cool if we had like language data for engagement materials. So yeah.
I really love that. Anybody else? Questions, comments?
I kind of like the idea of sort of treating the hub as an 8th, you know, entity in this deck, if we want to go that route, because I feel like we could have all those links that we're describing to different parts of the hub within that page, describing the work that we're currently focused on. And so I think that could work out well as kind of a launching point as well.
And I think it might also move multiple goals forward too, that if all of the initiative team leads or anyone who's filling out a slide here, you know, if even, it doesn't have to be the team leads, if whoever is leading a piece of the work knows that the piece about the hub is at the end too, because if some of those links are there, they can just scroll down too and just sort of, while they're in this one place, kind of jump in, you know, and be able to get easy access. Other Mark, I see you took yourself off mute.
Yeah, I was thinking just the same thing. I also really like that idea of a slide, and the point about loading this with too much information, these slides is well taken. But I think, for example, the hub group here, this would prompt a good conversation for ourselves of, you know, what are the 4 main things, 5 main things around which energy is, we've got it right now. And, you know, we've talked about how one of them is moving, yes-anding, you know, it is now a data repository and can be better, but then also moving towards metrics. And so if others saw the deck and saw that that is like where we are seeing energy and where we're have a goal in the next year or two to really get a good dashboard together for the entire alliance, I think that would be, people will see it when we run through this whole thing.
And that's, you know, I think another strategy of using this approach to the work is that, you know, when Ted is here working in the Taking Climate Action slides, and Ted was the second group to, Ted's group with climate was the second group to get access to the deck. You know, he can be looking at what the other groups are doing. Like, that's the thing too. It isn't like, you know, let's go find this and let's go find their goal sheet. Like, it's like everything's living right here. So, you know, he can go and glance at increasing equity or increasing access to nature right now, because they've done that. And even that was added. So Radhika and Danny did their piece after Ted finished his. So now, you know, Ted can even go and look and see kind of what they put in, see if there's any reverberations with climate, because it's a living space, it's a living workspace. And Laura can go, if she needs to, grab, okay, what are each of the goal teams doing? She can grab, you know, the 7+1 with the hub bordered slides, and boom, like here it is at a glance. Here's like what the initiative teams are doing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 +1. Okay, great. So that's an internal, for the most part, an internal facing document. It's a workspace, it's a work plan, it's a way to capture the work plan. We'll be looking at it again briefly on Wednesday. The other goal initiative teams will be moving it forward. But I want to talk a little bit about some of the needs for data as I understand them at this point from the initiatives, and sort of walk through those quickly with all of you. And with an eye on the clock, I also want to have us talk a little bit about sort of the more public facing kind of piece. You know, the reason that this is a deck, you know, sort of like the priorities and budgets and things like this, is that's an internal document, you know, shared out with, you know, executive council if need be, you know, depending on the audience, but also, you know, thinking about the stories we tell, you know, on the hub, and you know, with that being more broadly accessible, sort of that. But we'll get there in a second. But first I want to talk about some of the needs for data as we're thinking about the different initiatives, and some of the biggest ones that jump out. I would say probably the 2 priorities in terms of data are the water conversation writ large, and we're going to hear more about that tomorrow at the cafe. And they'll be, you know, and then they're going to have their team meeting in the wake of the cafe, like the other groups did. And so they are really kind of wrestling with sort of data around water. And so being able to engage the hub group, like once they get through the cafe conversation tomorrow, I think is going to be key for that initiative. The other one, and this goes right to Dave Holman's, sort of legendary work in the space, is really wrapping our heads around, protecting protecting landscapes for biodiversity conservation. I hate the name of that initiative. And so, really sort of thinking about where there are opportunities for protecting land and sort of how are we doing? And that's a lot of where that energy is for that group. And also that energy of sort of how can we think about activating the land trust in maybe a collaborative way across the Chicago Wilderness region. And we keep talking about having a confab, like we need to get that on the calendar. That's going to be where we're going to be sort of pressing the conversation with that group to just get a date on the calendar to pull the land trust together. But I think there's going to be some need for kind of mapping and thinking in a sort of fairly sophisticated way about it, because there are sensitivities around, what you work with and what you share sort of, across kind of different audiences and things. But this idea of getting everybody in a room, all the land trusts in a room and thinking broadly across the region about conservation is a really kind of key need that I see. Jim, were you going to say something?
I just coughed.
Oh,
Sorry.
okay. I wasn't sure if you were trying to say something. So, and then there are a lot of sort of more detailed, and I would say less sort of, I think sort of things that are like, this would be really great and nice, like the example that Amy brought up in terms of sort of language use across the region. But getting our head on straight around water and getting our head on straight around sort of land, like straight up conservation easements, fee simple land protection is what I see as the two highest priorities in the first half of 2023. Any sort of, let's see, some nods.
It just strikes me about that second one about the land trust is how kind of parallel that is to Iris and Carolyn's at the Growing Chicago Habitat. It's gathering the stakeholders who have influence on conservation on a particular land cover type or land use type, and get them to roll up their sleeves and strategize, prioritize, and take the next step. So maybe there are other examples that for down the road that pop up like that, but I can see that. Any particular data parts of that would really inform that conversation?
I guess one thing I'll speak on is I know at Friends we have our habitat connectivity action plan, and there's a lot of data in that related to opportunities for connecting different habitat hubs. And I will say, of course, the barrier, it's mainly just the Chicago area watersheds, but maybe that could be something still implemented into the data repository. But that's just one example I think about when I think about anything habitat related. So.
Ted, I see your hand, but first to sort of straight up answer Mark's question, I think, key for our region is prioritizing sort of in that sort of sense of like connecting things to each other. And I think that's going to be a key piece of it, and sort of thinking larger landscape scale wise, Chicago Wilderness region sort of scale wise is going to be key. And also think about sort of the collaborating around land conservation and maps, over the years that Vital Lands Illinois existed across the state, sort of like prioritizing with agencies and land trusts, kind of everybody at the table kind of thing is just something I think is sorely needed, because even in talking to the leaders of that group, and I've said this to the steering committee before, like we went for 45 minutes and nobody brought up land trusts for the very first time we met, because they're not thinking about it in that of the land trust as a major kind of tool and key piece of this in a coordinated way. So that's going to be key. Ted, I saw your hand, please.
Yeah, thanks, Brandon. This is not water related, but in our quest to get the hub to sort of show progress, there are a number of ways that we're interested in perhaps metricing some of the C4 and the mayor's caucus work. Number one. Number two, I'd love quickly to get a quick reaction, especially maybe from Jim. There have been remarks about FQA results as a metric on the hub, and I'm wondering if that's worthwhile or if that's too in the weeds for a data point or a data collection strategy.
I don't think it's too far in the weeds. It's done by site, and so when you're doing that, it's a good assessment of the quality of that polygon that's on the map. And so I don't think we should go away from that. I think it's a real crucial thing. I think it will, if we get access to some data, especially like the in-depth Illinois natural area inventory data, we all know that Belbo Prairie was struck a hard blow this past week or 2 weeks ago. And, we want to try to prevent that from happening. And if we can get further information about which ones are important, that's a really good character index for us. It's just like the water index which is escaping my mind right now. But those indexes are out there, they're proven, and they're good information. And I don't think we should try to recreate them. I don't think we should eliminate them. I think we should use it as a good data point to have. And I think we should be mindful of using that data and seeing where it takes us.
Thanks, that's helpful. The reason that I ask is just because that's come up a couple of times with some of these municipalities as an easy thing they can do, right, themselves.
If I can quickly respond to that, in the Healthy Lands Initiative, there's a goal tracking map that we've looked at a bunch of times. One of those categories in there is about florist equality assessments. So if organizations have that type of data and they want to upload it, we totally have a way of integrating that right now into the system. I just don't know how many folks have that kind of data. I had wondered if we should replace that out or keep it, only because we haven't heard a whole bunch about activity around it. So I'm glad to hear that you're bringing it up, that folks are interested in it. Another one we were thinking about is just like, does this area have a management plan, and when was it last updated? Like that could also be a data point for all the polygons across the CW region. So that's just my sort of quick update on that. But I wanted to also just, Brandon, to get back to you. This group has heard me talk about this a lot, but over the next few years, one of the things we want to work on is an urban wildlife corridor plan. So this is kind of a field museum initiative that we're hoping to really dive deep into. We know that it'll take multiple years to really dive into it fully, but we are doing some preliminary analysis now. We've started to do some connectivity analysis, where we're taking kind of where all the known protected lands are and then pulling out which ones are forested and which ones are like savanna and prairie, and then create a mosaic using right now just national land cover data set, so the NLCD, because it's a really involved analysis to do this. A lot of folks, or several of the folks on the call, might be familiar with the GIV, the Green Infrastructure Vision, from years ago. They did a connectivity analysis. That's kind of what the darker green, the lighter green blobs were on that analysis. So this is akin to that, but we want it to be one that can be updated periodically, so it's sort of always up to date instead of kind of a once and done sort of analysis. The preliminary analysis that I'm speaking of is going to go into some of the work we're doing right now with Iris and their group, and Caroline with the Rights Away as Habitat Working Group, Growing Chicago group. And so that'll actually be part of what we kind of hopefully feature next week as well. So sorry, that was a lot.
Are you taking any climate data into account for that?
You know, the new models, so we're using Linkage Mapper, and their new models do have climate tools that I haven't explored yet, but I definitely plan on diving into those to see what they can offer.
Cool. So in our final 5 minutes, I do want to I think that the hub, and especially with some of the conversations that, Laura and the Marks have had with others, and sort of thinking about use and funding, and sort of how this can be sort of writ large, it could be extraordinarily valuable. And I think it also can point to, like I alluded to earlier, making the case for how best to show impact investment, or like the impact of investment, investment in terms of philanthropic dollars, or, federal dollars, or whatever it may be, in terms of saying, hey, the best way to think about the impact is, this way of approaching the data, or this way of looking at sort of how we are moving, or what the possibilities and potentials can be. And I think also sort of stepping into that mindset of Chicago Wilderness Alliance being, a regional leader throughout the Midwest, and sort of thinking this way, but then also even a national model is definitely within the realm of possibility. And it really is not, and it's sort of like that mindset of not saying, to a funder at any level, sort of, what do you need us to report on, but being able to just turn that on its head and saying, okay, the way you should be thinking about how to smartly use your money to impact this work is thinking about it this way. This is how you should be measuring it. This is how you should be thinking about it. And I would love to keep that conversation sort of alive, both in this group and sort of across the initiatives and Chicago Wilderness Alliance writ large, because I think there's a lot of potential here to position CWA sort of as that sort of thought leader, for lack of a better, term, and sort of thinking about how we know what we know, and how funders and others, and partners can also be confident in sort of that knowledge and that impact. So I'm kind of jazzed about some of those possibilities, even with some conversations that I've been having. Any sort of 2 minutes left, and we will end this meeting on time. So any thoughts or immediate kind of reactions to that vision idea?
It's great.
Great. Okay.
That's really great. That's where we should all be keeping that in mind.
Great. Okay. All right, the next steps is I will ask Natalie to build out a couple of slides for you all to get started with. We'll share that out with the Marks. And Marks, if you want to hop on with Natalie and me sometime this week, if you have a chance, or if you just want to start playing in the deck, you're more than welcome to. But I'll ask Natalie to let you know after she's sort of built out your slides. There's also an instruction slide, which is the second slide in the deck, sort of, walking folks through sort of how to approach doing that work. So probably tomorrow she'll be able to ping that over to you.
That sounds really great. Yeah, I appreciate you doing that, and I appreciate you taking the time to meet with us today. It's always really helpful and great to hear kind of how things are going with all the initiatives, and to get those overviews. Obviously, as we start to fill out this PowerPoint slide, we'll want the other groups, I think, to look at it and to add to it as well. So to give them that feedback would be great.
And I will also touch base with Natalie about thoughts about how to capture sort of metric needs for the other initiatives elegantly in the deck too.
Cool.
Yeah, so Mark, going back to your slide for ag, is that located on the hub, or?
Yeah, it's on the landing page for ag. If you're looking on a smaller screen, it drops off like mobile devices because it doesn't
Yeah,
fit
I'm not
the
looking
screen
at
well,
it.
but
Okay, great. I just wanted to know where it was.
yeah, it's there. Should be there.
Thanks.
Yeah, and it strikes me as to the point of filling out a slide for this group. Mark and I can roll up our sleeves and take a first start with Brandon and Natalie. And then I can see this as an agenda item for the next meeting, it feels like, just to verify we got it right and all that.
Yeah, that's great. And speaking of the next meeting, Amy's agreed to give us a presentation on the new tool that they've developed. So looking forward to that. And also our next meeting is scheduled for the same time as the Chicago Public Schools spring break. So we may want to either move that or cancel that meeting and wait till the following. So, but that'd be a month from now. So I don't know, are people wanting to reschedule or should we just wait a month till the next meeting? I could really go either way. Jim, it looks like you're talking, but you're muted.
I think we should keep the meeting.
Okay, so then we'll work. Mark and I will work together to see, just move it a day or two or something.
Yeah, and don't miss Amy's presentation. This group right here should totally see what Friends has put together. It's an amazing tool.
Thanks, Mark. I will say I'm also excited. I know the UIC growing team is on here and I'll also be presenting it next week. So I
Nice.
appreciate all the partnerships here.
Cool. Thanks, everyone. Anybody have any final thoughts or comments?
Awesome, Brandon. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Brandon.
Take care. Thank you all.